Hello coaches, this week we're going to look at the pre-match warm-up, how to make the most of our time, limited time, to get the team ready before the match and have the team and have all the players all ready to perform at their maximum. How do we do it? How do we set it up? How do we make the most of our planning? That's what we're going to look at this week. Before we start, as usual, please give it a subscribe if you enjoy, give it a like, and also if you want more exercise ideas, check out the ebook. The link is below. Alright, warm-up, here we go. Coaches talk a lot about warm-ups in regards to training sessions and the science aspect of the game, but not often do you hear people talk about how to plan and structure a pre-match warm-up. So I'm going to take us through one looking at the professional level where you have a few coaches who can help you out with the planning as well. First off, let's take a look at the objectives. Why exactly do we need a good pre-match warm-up? First and foremost, the easy one, getting the players physically ready to go out and compete and perform, making sure everyone's warmed up. From a science aspect, making sure we tick all the boxes with that there. Second of all, making sure everyone's prepared mentally to go out with a tactical game plan, what shape we're playing, roles, responsibilities within that shape. Everyone's on the same page with that. Technically, everyone's comfortable executing all the skills in their position before the match. Is it long range passing? Is it shooting? Is it a little bit of heading? Whatever it is, everyone's at 100% in terms of their readiness to go out and execute technical aspects of it. And then mentally making sure everyone's motivated, everyone's prepared, everyone's excited, everyone's enthusiastic about going out and competing alongside each other. So those are all the objectives that we want to be able to tick off the box when we plan our pre-match warm-up. How do we do that? So I think the first thing and the most important thing is to differentiate the warm-up between a traditional training session. So as always as coaches, usually before the game, we want to make sure our team is ready, they're prepared, they know everything in regards to the opposition of what we're trying to do, but making sure that doesn't then lead its way into a training session is really important, because it can be too much information. You can overdo it physically, you can overdo it mentally and emotionally, and then it can be detrimental to performance. So making sure that the flow is always right in terms of timings, making sure that you hold yourself accountable with those timings, because as we're going to see, you don't have a lot of time to get your team ready. So if you spend too long or if you go off track, you might actually miss something out in the warm-up that could mess with the flow of the team or of individuals. So getting the timings right is very, very important. Also, the level of information to the players. Yes, you want to give them little reminders, but you want to get the balance right between reminders and too much information, so they come on and maybe you overload them in a warm-up and it's too much before a game and, again, detrimental to performance. Alongside that, understanding it's performance versus learning. Learning is a training session where they are getting used to taking on that information. Performance is almost in a state where the homework is done by that stage and it's going out and executing it. So there's two different mindsets, two different phases of psychology almost, and you have to get that right as a coach. And then that will also lead into the motivational factor of enthusiasm, focus, enjoyment that you want to keep as high as possible, because as Marcelo Bielsa says, it's a game that's triggered by emotions, and you also want to make sure that the team goes out excited to go out there and play together and perform. So here's how we would structure that. So there's a ton of things you can do. There's hundreds of exercises that we're all aware of. You've got different choices. But when all's said and done, most professional warm-ups typically involve 5 different things. The physical is always probably the most important one, where the players are getting their bodies ready and activated, and it's a traditional warm-up. There's usually a routine. It's usually led by an S&C coach or a fitness coach. That's always the first part of a professional warm-up. Then you go into a technical piece where, as we're going to see, that can adapt and change depending on the coach. But that's usually players getting on the ball, enjoying it, getting themselves comfortable, getting themselves confident, and just getting themselves mentally and physically ready to execute technical actions during the game. Then it moves into a possession game, and the possession is usually around decision making, pressure, where you're getting used to smaller spaces, or you're getting used to, again, checking your shoulder or maybe closing people down out of possession, but getting used to those actions in possession, out of possession, with a little bit of pressure, but not too much pressure, because it's a small-sided game and it's all controlled. Then there's a tactical aspect of it, And the tactical and positional aspect are usually what you see towards the back end of warm-ups, as we're going to take a look. They can be patterns, they can be shooting exercises, they can be functional back four works, but those are usually players in set positions doing things that are going to be asked of them in games. And like I said, those things can come together. So 5 different aspects. The coach or the philosophy of the club or the philosophy of the coach can then dictate how much time is spent into each one. We're going to take a look at a recent international friendly between Ecuador and Nigeria, and 2 different philosophies, but ultimately there's a lot of similarities between both. So something really interesting, even before the warm-up starts here, the Ecuador team comes out on the pitch, they say hello to the fans, but the coach gives them some space and just gives them a ball between 2, between 3, just to get themselves ready, just to enjoy the ball, just to maybe enjoy the stadium. It's only for about 45 to 60 seconds, but I think it's a nice little tip for a coach not to let them go on the grass and go straight into the warm-up. Give the players some space, and I think this is a way you can understand games are about the players, so give them some space, let them enjoy it, and let them get a feel and a touch of the ball before you start. Here's a good example of the physical piece. So all the players around a circle with the S&C coach. You can see they go into little different movements. You can see this organized in different ways. You can see 2 lines going. This is a circle. What they typically do is generally the same, different types of activational exercises, different types of change in direction, sprinting. Interesting in this one is that part of this warm-up is that after they finish doing some of the work in a circle, the Ecuador players walk towards the sideline where there's mats down for them and they do some work on the mats. You don't see that a lot in the professional game, but it's always something. Maybe it's a little bit of innovation from the S&C coach, but it just shows you that they're very thorough in what they do and they're ready to go from a physical standpoint. Now we move on to the technical piece. Some coaches like to do a little bit of physical work with this. You can see the Ecuador team here. There's a little bit of check back, check forward, so a little bit of change of direction. Maybe that's a progression from their warm-up. But the technical piece is typically quite simple. You can change this from a passing pattern. You can change this from a diamond. You can do whatever you like with it. Usually not very complicated, giving everyone touches on the ball, but very, very controlled. So you can see there it goes from a passing into heading. Again, the physical part of it's always there. Go back, go check, sprint forward, sprint back. Something that I watched when I saw Liverpool play a couple of years ago on a pre-season game was Pep and Linders just had the starting 11, 10 players in pairs, and it was just 5 yards away, but making sure the passes were crisp, making sure the technique was right, making sure everyone was prepared before they went into a possession exercise. So moving into the possessional piece, this is usually where professional teams take the starting lineups and then using those 10 players. The goalkeepers are with the goalkeeper coach. So the 10 outfield players that are going to start the game are going to play a little possession-based game, which generally is preparing them from decision making, a little bit of pressure, maybe closing down, out of possession, the actions that's going to be required of them in a match. Now you can do this in different ways. You can play normal 5v5 in a 20 by 30 yard square, but in doing that there might not be a level of success because 5v5 with 10 professional players, it's going to be quite competitive. There's not going to be an overload situation, so players like to get comfortable, to get a bit of success, to get a bit of rhythm, to get a bit of confidence in that pre-game warm-up. So it might be a good idea to move it into a 4v4 plus 2 where you have a plus 2 overload and you can get a little bit of success in possession. You can also then manipulate those 2 additional players, 2 neutral players, into end zone players, so you can make the game directional and a little bit more competitive. You can see here Ecuador choose the 4v4 plus 2 in the middle to have that additional overload, but it just changes the picture all the time and makes sure the players are getting that confidence, getting that rhythm, and getting exposure to those decisions and that pressure within a controlled environment. This isn't usually played for too long. It's usually 60 seconds, 90 seconds, quick recovery, go again, 2 or 3 sets, nothing too serious before they go into the tactical element of it. So now we go into the tactical piece. Teams generally like to do this in different ways. Sometimes it's a pattern with all 11 players. We'll watch here Ecuador, and you can see that it's a very, very interesting pattern that it comes from a coach, and then there's 3 passes before they switch the play into the other wide area, and then it's a cross and a finish. So a pass from the coach. This might be a number 8 that starts, maybe a number 7 or 11 in an inside pocket. Maybe it's a fullback who's involved as well. The switch into a central midfielder, out to the other side, and it's a cross and a finish to 3 or 4 players inside the penalty box. Interesting twist to this one is a second ball that comes from a coach to a player on the outside of the box. So again, just a different picture for players to get themselves ready for the different actions in a game in possession. So more tactical is more positional work, more specifics around the technical things that you're going to be required to do in a match, but also building confidence in terms of the pictures, in terms of the technique. You can see here they go on the right side, they go on the left side. Again, this might be 3-4 minutes max, and then changing it over to do another exercise. And then positional work may be in units, might be defensive units, maybe midfielders, forwards, or in this case, you can see here it's just an individual player. So this could be a defender that's grabbed a coach and said, hey, can you play a few balls in the air, or can you bounce a few balls that I can look to intercept, change the direction, things like that there. Usually more specific to people's needs. You can divide the team in 2. Here's a way to do that there. So maybe you've got a group of attacking players on the edge of the box. Your 9, your 10, your 7, 11, your midfielders as well. They might do a little bit of shooting and crossing and finishing on the edge of the box. That doesn't mean your whole team has to do it. You might use your back 4, your starting back 4, especially if you're a possession-based team and you want to get your players comfortable in the rhythm and circulating the ball early in the game. You can just put your back 4 across the halfway line, and you can get them a ball, and you can just have a different type of pattern in a build. Nothing too stressful, but maybe it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, switch, goes out to the other side, gets everyone confident, gets everyone prepared. So this is an example of how I would structure a 30-minute breakdown. I wouldn't warm up for over 30-35 minutes because, again, the heat, the physical load, all these things you got to take into consideration. You want to make sure the players are ready. You don't want to do too much. Same way you don't want to give them too much information. You also don't want to do too much physically. So I would do an 8 minutes activation. Sometimes it's good if you don't have a strength and conditioning coach. Sometimes it's good for the players to lead that there. Give them a little bit of responsibility, a little bit of space to get themselves going. Maybe a little bit of leadership opportunity. The technical aspect, I would do 6 sets of 60 seconds. Again, nothing too long, nothing too strenuous. Give them 60 seconds then to recover. It's a stretch. That's a little bit of space to do their own thing. 12 minutes. Then I would move on to a possession exercise. I would only play 3 sets of 60 seconds because it's just generally getting the players used to those pictures, getting them used to a little bit of confidence on the ball, closing the ball down, little combination play. Nothing too strenuous. 20 by 30 yard area typically, 6 minutes total. And then the last part, I would have the tactical and the positional combined for 4 minutes. I wouldn't have a stop start, I wouldn't have a recovery. I would have a defensive group doing the passing across the back and circulating the ball. I would then have the attackers doing some shooting and cross and finishing. And then for the last 60 seconds, you might give them a combination of both. Maybe it's a pattern that Ecuador did to goal involving all 11 players. But making sure that you commit to those 30 minutes and managing those 30 minutes. So as the season goes on, the players get used to what that 30 minutes looks like, and then they're not too stressed with, or what are we doing now? You don't have to spend a lot of time explaining stuff. You don't have to spend a lot of time coaching stuff. You can use that 30 minutes for the players' time, allow them the space to get ready for the game. So then maybe before the match, you come in with one last little bit of tactical instruction, a reminder, or maybe it's a little motivational factor. But generally the players are physically, technically, and tactically ready to go to out and perform, have a great match, and you can feel good about that pre-game process. Okay, hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like below, subscribe, make sure you don't miss it. This is part of our Modern Soccer Coach 20 attacking ebook promotion. So if you want more exercises, ideas, it's all principle based work. You can take it to any system and works on build out, works on combination play, and works on final third play as well. So if you want to check that out, please go to the link below, modernsoccercoach.com. There's more information there, lots of stuff on the website, modernsoccercoach.com/shop. Thanks for the support. I'll see you next week.